Welcome to the EV Ready podcast, featuring industry leaders and their perspectives on electrification, hosted by EV Ready Energy. Hey everybody, welcome to the EV Ready podcast. I am grateful to have on today Nicolas Zart, the founder of Electric Air Mobility. And I'm Nicolas, I'm especially excited for this because I spend all day in EV, but I don't spend a ton of time focusing on this. So looking forward to learning from you today.
Yeah, thanks. Well, thanks for having me over, Chris. And I'm really excited to talk a little bit about that, especially because my roots are in EVs. I started in EVs, and somewhere along the line, I got to see like these airplanes flying and eVTOLs flying. And so there we go. So here we are. But yeah, it's the convergence of mobility. So that's where we're on track for.
Can you tell me about that? Like, the industry in general, like not focused on commercial air mobility. It's a little bit of an afterthought, I think, right now for the industry, but obviously you got into it and it sounds like, you saw them and you got passionate about it. Tell us about how that came about.
Yeah, and you're right. It is a bit, actually, when it comes to infrastructure, it's always a little bit of an afterthought. And if you think about it, back in 2008, 2009, yeah, it was great to see all these EVs and all these projects and everything. But the whole time, I think a lot of us were saying, guys, what about the infrastructure side of it? Where are we going to recharge? So I started roughly around 2004. I was in San Jose, and that was the beginning of Tesla, way before Elon Musk. And so I was always like, my background is Bugattis, Alfa Romeos. I'm an Italian, gearhead, diehard. But I was also raised around airplanes and all. So that was my passion, looking at the whole holistic view of it. But in 2014, I saw the very first company. They were called Dufour Aerospace. Now they used to be called Dufour Hamilton first, and they were flying an electric Acrobat airplane for roughly 45 minutes. So a half hour of usable flying time, and then 15 minutes of reserve, which I thought was a heck of a lot by the time. So switched over because I thought that's really where my passion is. But again, by 2019, I was like, this is crazy. We really have to focus on infrastructure. So infrastructure for us is really what we call vertiports, which is a sort of a modern interpretation of heliports. Where do they land? Where do they take off? What do we need as far as energy, electricity, sustainable aviation fuels? Because a lot of them will be hybrids, and of course, hydrogen, which, by the way, in this case, makes a lot of sense in the air. And so that's pretty much how it started. And so along the years, I've been a consultant and a journalist, and it gave me a sort of a dual view of the industry all in all. So that's it in a bit of a nutshell.
So in this industry right now, like in just the standard EV charging industry, it's misconception galore, right? Especially it's election season right now, so there's no more misconceptions being floated than there are right now. In your industry, I think there's probably like order of magnitude significantly more anxiety about EV as it relates to flying. So can you talk a little bit about like some of the misconceptions, the biggest misconceptions in the industry right now that you'd like to address, and kind of how you talk about it?
Yeah, excellent question. And it's like such a loaded question. There's so many things to say about that.
The most loaded question.
But you're right. So I was an independent journalist, right? I was going to say sign my soul to the devil, but I never really worked for any of these big productions because, simply, you have to be specialized. And usually when you're specialized, you have a limited audience and everything. So yeah, you're right. There are a lot of misnomers. There's also a lot of misinformation being spread out right now and politicized. Of all the things, this is mobility. This is transportation. We love our cars. We love our motorcycles. We love our airplanes. But it's not a Republican or a Democrat concept by any stretch of the imagination.
The new technology.
Yeah, exactly. So, that's ridiculous. It's just nonsense. So, yeah, there are, and unfortunately, I think the biggest one right now, and it's the one I've been hearing for almost like 17 years now, is it's a toy for the rich. Oh boy, how many times have you heard that one? Well, guess what? My phone here was a toy for the rich. Had it not been for the military, the rich, the VVIPs, everybody else, I couldn't pick this up for $50 like I can do today. It would still be $20,000, right? So, yeah, it's not a toy for the rich. Actually, more than anything right now, it's the military dumping, millions of dollars into testing it out. And then it will be VVIP first, and then VIP. And then, of course, I see sort of a bifurcation between tourism and business travel, right? And then eventually it'll be you and me, on our app. We'll just go, hey, I want to go downtown, and instead of spending 25 minutes in a car, it'll be a nice 5 to 10 minute flight. So that's one of the biggest problems we have out there. The other one is, and that one always makes me laugh because it's like, well, eVTOLs. So, for those who don't know, are electric vertical takeoff and landing. It's, think of a helicopter, instead of having one rotor, lots of little propellers, right? So the first thing people say is, whoa, it's super noisy. To which I ask this, have you ever seen one? Well, no, but I heard it is. Well, I've seen a lot of them fly, and no, it's not noisy. Yeah, for about 100, 200 feet, you hear a whirl or a whiz, which I personally like that much better than a whoop, whoop, whoop from a helicopter, or a turbine, taking off, or a turbofan taking off. And after that, after 300 feet, you barely hear it. So the one thing that I did hear were the chaser airplanes right next to it, that you could hear thousands of feet up in the air. And even at one point, I saw Joby fly, and it was pretty amazing because you couldn't hear the Joby eVTOL at all. You could hear the chaser, but then a big Leonardo helicopter came in, and let me tell you, that's the only thing you could hear. So the FAA, the Federal Aviation Agency, has a saying that people see noise more than they hear it. So that's the other one that I really can't stand. And then there are other really weird things like flying cars and air taxis. Like for me, a taxi, you go, hey, come here, and it comes to you. That's not going to be the case. You're going to have to walk to a vertiport, go to a vertiport, drive to a vertiport. And flying cars, they will happen, but there are only like 3 flying car companies right now. And that's going to be in 5-10 years from now. So yeah, good old mainstream entertainment media news, whatever they call themselves. Ugh, what a disservice.
And talk about like what, so you just talk about the 3 big misconceptions that you've been dealing with. And I think you're still going to deal with those for the next 10 years. Like I think those are going to continue. But what are the 3 actual biggest challenges tied to pulling this technology off?
Yeah, so the real challenges right now are good challenges to have, and that's certification. We really want everything to be certifiable and super safe. You often hear flying is the safest mode of transportation. Well, you have to be very specific. Airline flying is the safest mode of mobility right now, and that's because there are so many levels and layers. From the aircraft itself to air traffic management itself to the airport section. I mean, it's just incredible. So certification is the biggest thing that we're all looking for. And it's a good problem to have, right? So my tagline is, technology is not the problem, certification is the problem, or there are more solutions than obstacles in general. I think that's the biggest thing. The other two is, again, it's also how fast can we make chargers come down in price and in operation. So unlike the EV world, we go in megawatts and mega amps in charging, right? We need at least, 1,000 volts at least, 1,000 amps at least. An aircraft goes, 4,000 to 5,000 amps. I mean, we're talking some super megawatts chargers out here. So our hydrogen stations are, 2 to 5 megawatts. So we need a lot more certification when it comes to that. And by the way, also a misnomer is that vertiports are not going to be certified. Like airports are not certified, right? Only the airplanes are certified, and then they choose at this airport we can fly. So yeah, it's a kind of a weird dance that we're having, and it's just like what the industry does, what Boeing and Airbus does, and then the infrastructure sort of settle around it. You go, okay, what do you need?
So kind of piggyback off of one of the things you just said. So give us like a 5 to 10 years, because I think for the average person, I mean, for me, for sure, when I'm thinking about like electric air mobility, which by the way, great company name, because that's what I would call it anyways. When I'm thinking about this, it's really hard for me to conceptualize. It feels to me right now like an electric car. Before I drove that first Tesla in 2013, like I can't really conceptualize like it or the experience or anything like that. So talk us through the next, let's call it 5 to 10 years, and like what the path towards the general population being able to see this, feel this, experience this, change like the conceptual, idea of like what this means. Like what does it look like?
The next 5-10 years are going to be pretty simple, I think. But right now, there's a lot of enthusiasm in the industry, and it probably will remind you a lot of what we went through in 2008, 2010, all the way up to 2013, actually, where everybody was proclaiming a lot of things about their EVs were going to be able to do this, and that. And so we hear a lot of, the big guys right now are Joby, Archer, Beta, at least in the US. Those are the big guys we follow and we work with, actually. And they hope to be certified by next year. So that's the important thing. And what that means is that they will be able to actually have people like you and me in the aircraft fly from one vertiport to another. So the next, up until I would say 2026 to 2027, we're going to see a lot of demos or con-ops. And these are going to be about really testing the battery, the power density of the batteries. Can they really stand, to fly 20 minutes and then land somewhere? And if they can't recharge, can they go somewhere else? Can they divert to another place? So that's really what we're going to see for the next 2 to 3 years. After that, like I said, I think it's going to be more and more VVIP, VIP kind of traffic. So right now I'm working with I can't talk about it just yet, but I'm working with an interesting airport to bring important people to get to a golf course. I know of all the places, right? And so that is, they land with their, $100 million airplanes, and then they hop on an eVTOL and get to the golf course. And I know, that's a toy for the rich there, but it also means that, we're starting there already. And the more we mass manufacture them, the more affordable it becomes. But I think that tourism is going to follow. So places like, actually, South Korea is pretty active with that. They've designated islands where, eVTOLs will be flying. But think also of cruise ships coming in. And then people just hop on an eVTOL and just go sightseeing. Think of Rio de Janeiro or Villefranche-sur-Mer and Nice and all these places. So there's really that. And I think somewhere down the road, I think before 2030, we will have, you and I will be able to go on an Uber-like, Lyft-like kind of app and go, hey, I want to fly somewhere. There's also another big race, which is very similar to what's happening with EVs right now. But there are a few companies all companies are really going towards autonomy, right? Being autonomous, no pilots. So there's also this other race of right now, 98% of all the aircraft are going to be piloted, and they go anywhere from one pilot and one passenger to 1 to 2 passengers, all the way up to about 4 passengers. And eventually we'll get to the 7, 9-seaters. For the first few years, we'll have a pilot. So we're going to see that after a while, these pilots are going to stay on the ground in a sort of a remote ground control place, and then they will pilot the aircraft. And then eventually, at one point or another, we'll be using AI for lots of different reasons, but it will help us to help these aircraft fly autonomously, but still with humans checking in and everything. So there's in aviation, we have different certifications, right? We have certification, like you and I can go and buy an experimental aircraft right now. We can fly it in the day. We can't fly it at night. So that's, we can have certain eVTOLs, like single-seaters, that will fly like that. These single-seaters are really exciting to me because it means that right in front of your house, one of them can land. You can hop in and then go somewhere else, either to a vertiport, to downtown, to a meeting, or to, catch a car ride somewhere, a bus ride, a boat ride on a spaceship, Hyperloop, whatever you want. So there are a lot of different races. I guess the best way to really look at advanced air mobility is we're really filling a niche mobility need that hasn't been asked for yet, but is there. We're not replacing helicopters or airplanes, not yet. Maybe in 10, 15 years, that's another story. But we're going where these guys can't go. So, from airport to cities in a quieter, more efficient, and safer way, obviously. So yeah, it's a pretty crazy dream that we're building, but it's happening. And they've been flying around for a long time. In 2019, I was in Guangzhou in China, and Nihan was flying across the Yellow River. So technology is not the problem. It's just, again, certification is. So I know I've answered in a very wide way there, but I hope I've sort of answered your question.
Oh, no, it's all good. It's all good. And like my next question, like tied to that, would be like geographically from a policy perspective, who's first?
Yeah, so obviously most of the money spent is right here in the U.S., so we're definitely leading the way. But the two entities that we're watching is obviously the Federal Aviation Agency, which, by the way, reports to the DOT, the Department of Transportation. So, and just to make things a little bit more complicated, to show you how complicated things are, if it's public flying, it's the FAA. If it's private flying, it's the DOT. But the FAA reports to the DOT. So you can see how pretty interesting it is.
Wow.
Building a vertiport is a nightmare. I love it.
What a pain
so
in the
we're
butt.
watching to see what the FAA does. And the FAA is finally now getting into a performance aspect. They really want to see what the eVTOL, what the performance of the eVTOL and the eSTOL is. And for those of you who don't know what eSTOLs are, they're short takeoff and landing airplanes. They take off on a very short runway and land on a very short runway, which is what we do at Electric Air Mobility. So we're watching at these guys and seeing what they want to do for that. And that's, of course, we're following the FAA for that. So far, we have an executive brief, EB 105A. That's our Bible. And then eventually that will become an AC that gives us really strict guidelines as to can't have a big charging station next to a vertipad, that kind of stuff. FADO, like the angle of approach of a vehicle. I actually, my eyes are on the Emirates. So I travel a lot there. I have a project out there because the General Aviation Authority there is watching what the FAA is doing and EASA is doing. And they sort of see, what these guys are doing, and they're seeing the bigger picture for these guys, filling in the points that are missing. So I think really we could ultimately see the very first commercial aircraft flying in the Emirates, anywhere from Abu Dhabi to Dubai, maybe to Ras Al Khaimah. Most likely it would have to be China, because China is an island unto itself. It has enough people to do it. It has enough money to do it. It has its own, the CAAC, the Chinese Aviation Authority, controls everything. And what the heck, they can do it because, well, they can do it. So it wouldn't surprise me that the very first ones start in China, and there'll be a lot of sarcasm and a lot of people will dismiss them, but don't dismiss China. They definitely know how to do things. India right now is super active, and of course Asia. So Japan is following also what the FAA and EASA does. Same thing with Australia. So, but yeah, the two leaders are the US and Europe, and that's where everything happens. So yeah, we have every month we have an update, and we're on working groups, working with all these guys, and well, it's pretty exciting. If not, gives you. I lost a lot of hair, by the way. I had hair when I started all this.
And we're gonna lose more here is talking about like power challenges. So obviously, like on the chart, like commercial, vehicle side, it's a huge problem. Talk about what the problem is here and how you think you solve it.
Yeah, so like I said, our power, one of the reasons why I was at Move America a few weeks ago is I wanted to see what charging companies were out there, and I noticed only like one or two of them potentially could handle the voltage and the amperage that we need. Vertiport, we need a charging station. We need one or two big charging stations, and we need a fast charger and trickle chargers at night, right? And then we also, of course, need storage. So when I design one, it's got to have that. And that's got to be a little bit farther away from the vertiport. Then we need sustainable aviation fuels. A lot of them will be hybrids. Okay. And then, of course, we need, well, guess what? We need a hydrogen station, right? Which is pretty much the size of an international shipping container. So we need to have that slightly off there. So you can see like exponentially bigger than a heliport. Our approach a few years ago was to think that, this is nuts because we're not just a mobility platform. We're an energy platform. And that's the way we have to look at this. Because back in 2008, when I was talking to Southern Edison and all these guys out there, they were like, yeah, whatever, EVs. I'm like, are you kidding? This is like going to be a gold mine for you guys. But they were so not interested. Now it's a little bit of a different story. They've seen what happened with EVs, and now they're sort of starting to look at us in a different way. So our vertiports are really smart grid enabled. They're going to be like load balancing systems. But in order to get all that energy, one of my first thing is, where is the closest substation? I want to be as close as possible to that substation. And I got to tell you right now, the one thing that I'm looking into more than anything, and I am so thankful that the nuclear world is getting into its fourth generation of nuclear reactor designs, which, by the way, they're finally coming back to the original idea that small reactors are intelligent. We know how to handle this. Or submarines everywhere that have that. They don't go poof. France has had 80% of its electricity with just small nuclear reactors. Big nuclear reactors, big problems. 3 Mile Islands, Chernobyl, Fukushima. Different generations, but the same big problem. So we're going back to small nuclear reactors. Actually, we're going back to what we call small modular reactors using molten salts. Those are the ones we're looking at because an SMR, a small modular reactor, would power a network of vertiports. And even further down the line, in a more granular way, micro reactors would be enough for a very big what we call a vertihub, which would be like a big primary airport. So that would be enough to give us enough electricity for the next day to make hydrogen for the aircraft that use directly hydrogen or through fuel cells, and to still have that load balance so that when the grid is taxed, because hey, guess what? Utilities didn't upgrade their anything whatsoever for 40, 50 years now. And we're seeing the results of that through AI, through data centers. So we're sort of positioning ourselves as, hey, we're your friends, we're your buddies. And so we're going to try to work with them as much as we can by making sure that our vertiports are smart, grid capable. So yeah, I feel like, I left the AV industry with a 2D problem and came up to now a 4D problem with all of these extra energy problems. On top of, we have the same problem that we've had with the EV industry with CHAdeMO and CCS and everything. So now we have CCS2, but now we have MCS that's coming up, and all of them are absolutely wonderful. But please, let's work together, because SAE is fighting for another protocol, and it's like, you guys, you're just slowing down the industry. But ultimately, I'm going to cut the cord. I'll put whatever different port on it, and boom, that's it, done deal. I don't
care. And so talk about why hydrogen is a great energy use case for this specific mobility sector.
I think one of the biggest bottleneck for hydrogen with cars is, first of all, shunting hydrogen is horrible, right? It leaks through everything. There's only one compound that can actually keep it together. So having a lot of different stations dispensing hydrogen for cars it's a logistics nightmare. However, when it comes to flying, we can easily create it the night before, give it the day after, and then done deal over and over and over again. So we don't have that transportation, that time sensitive problem that we have with hydrogen. And if, I'm thinking of like secondary vertiports, tertiary vertiports, the ones with a lot of fields, you have solar panels or any kind of renewable energy at your disposal, then it's, it makes it even greener to make hydrogen. So I think hydrogen has a much better way to do better things, at least in aviation. There's also a misnomer about hydrogen in the air. Yes, it doesn't pollute, but it does really put out a lot of sorry, I'm forgetting it now, but a lot of bad stuff. So yeah, vapor does come out, but there are a lot of oxides. Is it not nitrate oxides? I think that come out of it, which is not that good either. So burning it in a turbine might be a good idea, as long as we really make sure that nothing comes out of it. Interacting it with a fuel cell, that's a great idea. It's a little heavier, but it has a much better leg to stand on when it comes to aviation. Yeah, that's a horrible pun, is it? A leg to stand on in aviation.
And tell me, like, what are some of the other major companies in the industry? Because I think most of the companies people don't know. Yep. Like, who are the big players here? Who are really making the strides in this space that are advancing the technology and getting us closer to going live?
I would say, to start with, you would have to say Joby, because they've been around for the longest time, and they've been flying for a long time. These guys are really cool. I like them a lot, and I love the design. It's got big windows, so you can see what's happening down there, just like a helicopter. So those would be the first ones. They're also the most well-funded. So they're probably like Tesla in many ways. Then you have Archer, and Archer would be more like maybe Kia or Hyundai or something like that. Well-funded too, not as well, but they have a good idea. The culture is wildly different, but the technology is pretty similar and everything. And then you also have my favorite because I work with them even closer than I do with Joby and Archer, and that's Beta. And Beta, these guys are aviators, right? These guys have it in their blood. In fact, if you go work for Beta, they say, go and get we'll pay for your pilot's license. That's how serious they are about that. And they started with an eVTOL, but now they're using it as a regular electric airplane or eCTOL. And these guys are the big three players when it comes to, the famous air taxis that we're going to be taking. On the infrastructure side of things, we have Skyports is probably the one that's the best known, again, because it is the most funded. So it can definitely say a lot of things, and it's doing a lot of great work and everything. One of my favorite companies I work very closely with is Blue Nest. because Jose is a good friend of mine, and we work really well together. And then there are other companies here and there, and it really sort of becomes very granular after that because everybody has like one really good solution. So this is where we come in with electric air mobility. I was like, this is really nuts, guys. We need to work together, and we do. So I've sort of picked at least 2 to 3 to 5 products and services within everything that's needed within a vertiport. And so I hope that we're coming in as, the sort of if not a third, a fourth, or a fifth player or something like that, because we need to be agnostic to work well together. And that's what we're trying to do to make sure that we're doing that. One thing to say about Joby also is that they aim to do what Boeing was doing in the 1920s and 30s, design, build, operate, and do the vertiports themselves and everything, which, you know what, tip my hat to you if you can do that, because that is something that's not easy to do at all. I mean, Boeing was broken up into 3 companies, United, Pratt Whitney, and Boeing, because they couldn't do that. So we'll see. We'll see how they get to do it, but they could do it. So we just need to make sure that our vertiports and their needs coincide. So yeah, there are a lot of great companies, and you know what? There's always that company right now that's under radar doing fantastic work, and they're going to surprise the heck out of us if investors come back and become wise. Because in aviation, in aerospace, the golden rule is a decade, $10 billion, and 1,000 engineers. And that's for traditional aviation. And for us, we can kind of, shrink the size of time and everything, but it's at least a decade before anything happens. So investors, beware. It's a decade before you see profits.
Last question for you. Obviously what you're doing is really interesting, and I think like incredibly unique. Just let everybody know, like, if they're interested in learning more about what you're doing, how to get in touch with you, a little bit about your company, and we'll end it with that.
Sure, absolutely. So the name of the company is Electric Air Mobility, and yeah, I couldn't believe nobody had ever taken that URL a few years ago, so I got it. You can follow, we do a lot of writing and videos on electricairmobility.news. We also have a .com site, but that's really just for clients, so there's nothing much to see there. And we're building a .org where we're going to have a council and all that kind of good stuff and everything. I would say really the most important thing, and I'm on LinkedIn, obviously very, very active on LinkedIn. The one thing that I would tell people if they're interested in finding out what's happening in AAM or advanced air mobility, I would say shun all the big news outlets. It's not that they don't do a good job. It's just that it's not their topic, right? They're good at politics. Apparently they're very good at that. But when it comes to, like even EVs are not really that good. They don't fully understand that. And it's normal. That's not what they're paid to do. So follow like the specialized news media, read Future Flight, read Aviation International News, eVTOL Today. There are so many sites that are absolutely wonderful, and these guys are they're really good journalists. They know what they're talking about, and I'm sure I'm forgetting a few, but yeah, I should write an article about all the other sites that we should read. But yeah, that's what you need to do, and make sure you really and go out to the events. There are lots of great events if you can afford it. Go out to these events; you'll get to meet people. It's very warm and very inviting. Everybody likes to talk, and it's pretty exciting all around. But yeah, definitely trust specialized journalists. That's, I would say, most and foremost.
Awesome. Nicolas, thank you so much for taking the time to come on. Really appreciate it.
You bet. Well, thanks, Chris. I mean, that's really, it's wonderful to be able to talk about that. And, it's like we're cousins, right? I mean, you guys are on the road with wheels, but we're up in the air, but we still need wheels because our vertiports are designed to work with the road and boats and everything. And we, we'll be charging cars too. So EVs too. So you and I are going to be working in the long run for sure.
As you know, our company focuses a lot on the power piece of it, which obviously is like probably the biggest problem that you have. So hopefully our lives, get a little bit closer to yours as time passes here.
Oh, you bet. I'm dragging you in. I mean, you don't have a choice, right? No, but we'll be talking for sure. Absolutely. Thanks for having me today. I really appreciated that.
Awesome.
And, we'll talk soon again, I hope.